This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome to Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us. A little later on, we will be joined by Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. We'll talk three-year-olds. There was plenty of three-year-old action this past weekend, and we'll get Jeremy's comments on some of the more important races, both stakes, and there was a couple of other races worth noting on the three-year-old side as well. We'll also be joined a little later on by Ken Weingartner, communications man from the United States Trotting Association. They had their Dan Patch Awards dinner this past Sunday night. They handed out the Harness Horse of the Year award. We'll talk a little bit about that and some of the other award winners from 2013 on the sulky side of the game. Also, if I have a chance, we just came out of the handicappers report, but towards the end of the show, if there's a minute or two, I may go to get a chance to just give you an idea of how I'm going to construct my Rainbow Six ticket this afternoon. I have a ticket that I believe is about $42. And I'll advise people again, it's $1.4 million in the pool right now at Gulfstream. The Rainbow Six, for a reminder, a jackpot bet. It only pays off the entire pool if there is a single ticket. There was a couple of close calls this weekend, but it paid off to Consos. And they're now putting in, over the weekend, they were putting about $500,000 into the pool. I'm not quite sure what it'll be on a weekday, but it's going to be six figures. And the Consos get taken out of that daily pool, what gets put in. So essentially, it's Consos are 60% of what's put in that day. So let's say, for instance, it is $500,000. That means the consolation tickets, if you more than one person picks six, it's split between all of those people. And so 60% of 500,000, you'd be playing for 300,000. That's a pretty good pick six pool right there. So for a 20-cent bet, jump in, take a shot, hope things maybe are kind of logical and you can put together a little ticket that makes some sense for a reasonable amount of money, and the payoff should be fairly decent. Again, $1.4 million in that Rainbow Six this afternoon at Gulfstream Park. Also a reminder, though, for more traditional wager, although one of these isn't, but for tomorrow, there's some good action, too, on these multi-race wagers. Fairgrounds, and that's the one that is a little bit of an aberration, they have a pick five that is a jackpot pick five. I think it's called the Black Gold. And I think it's a 50-cent bet. I'm not exactly sure about that. It may be a buck, but I'm pretty sure it's a 50-cent bet. But their Black Gold pick five down at Fairgrounds is now at $414,000. So that's becoming interesting. But the traditional pick sixes tomorrow, Santa Anita and Aqueduct. Santa Anita carryover of $198,000. Aqueduct to carryover $105,000. So again, Fairgrounds the pick five, Santa Anita and Aqueduct pick six tomorrow. So if you want to do a little handicapping ahead, you have some plays for tomorrow as well. But this afternoon, it is that big $1.4 million carryover at Gulfstream. Do want to remind folks, I talked about this a couple of days ago, but I just want to remind you, if you are a fan of Survivor on CBS as they kick off the new season tonight, you'll have a little horse racing interest. A Tampa Bay Downs based trainer, Leon McManus, and I have to say, until I read this article in the Blood Horse, I wasn't really familiar with him, but he's a guy who has been training, really I think it said in the article, took out his license last year and wound up 2013, 10 winners and 73 starters, so not bad. So far this year, shooting an over, however, at the Tampa meet, at least when this article came out, 5 or 6 days ago. But all of that said, Leon McManus, horse trainer down at Tampa Bay Downs, he will be one of the contestants on Survivor this year. The article, he talks a little bit about the experience, but again, these guys are all sworn to secrecy. Obviously, the show has been shot, the winner has been decided, but they are all sworn to secrecy after they come out of this, and so he wouldn't give up how he did on the particular show, but you can watch, and again, if you're a fan of Survivor, the season begins tonight on CBS at 8 p.m. kind of interesting. McCannis says it was a 100% life-altering experience until you do it yourself, where everything is stripped away from you and you have to survive on your own wits and life skills and your ability to interact with other people and work as a team. You don't realize how many things you take for granted. Kind of interesting. And the article goes on to say, McCannis was a senior running back at Northeastern University back in 2001, rushed for over 1,700 yards, was named the outstanding senior football player in New England, pretty good. And then for a while after he graduated with a degree in media arts and design, he worked in modeling, which explains how he got onto Survivor, obviously. Remember the first couple of seasons of Survivor? In fact, all these reality shows, just kind of average people. And then about 3 seasons in, they were all models or good-looking in one form or another. But Leanne McCannis, again, Tampa-based trainer, one of the contestants starting tonight on Survivor, 8 o'clock on CBS. So again, a little rooting interest for those of us on the horse racing side of the game. I mentioned Monday or yesterday, one of the days I looked at a couple of votes coming up in Massachusetts this week that we wanted to keep our eyes on. One of those was yesterday, one's Friday. The one yesterday was the voters in Revere were either giving thumbs up or thumbs down to having a casino at Suffolk Downs. And on Friday, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission is going to decide where to site a slots parlor. So that will affect the harness track up there. This vote yesterday was affecting Suffolk Downs. Things looking good for Suffolk, at least based on the vote yesterday. No decisions have been made, but things can go forward for a casino at Suffolk Downs as the voters in Revere overwhelmingly passed the referendum to allow a casino at Suffolk Downs. The votes weren't counted, but it was estimated to be a fairly overwhelming victory. They were saying 63 to 37% was the way it looked. By state law up in Massachusetts, you can only put a casino where the local population says okay. So the voters locally said yes. Suffolk Downs now still in the running for that casino. However, again, they have not, final decisions have not been made because they're still competing with Wynn Resorts, who's planning a casino in Everett, Massachusetts. So the state itself has to decide where it's going to go. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully it does go to Suffolk Downs. The Suffolk Downs would essentially be the landlord. The casino would be there. There wouldn't be a real close relationship between horse racing and casino, but again, Suffolk Downs would be the landlord, so would benefit from that. And the owners of Suffolk Downs have said subsequently, if this all happens, they're at least committing to another 15 years of horse racing. So that would be good. It would certainly provide some life for Suffolk Downs. The flip side is both at the Sulky track, where they're looking for the slots parlor, and Suffolk, where they're hoping for the casino. Both of those tracks have said if those things don't happen, the future very, very bleak for horse racing at those particular tracks up in Massachusetts. So again, the vote yesterday, at least, good for horse racing. Rhea Antonia, after having finished out of the money in the Rachel Alexandra at Fairgrounds this past weekend, Jeremiah Engelhardt now looking perhaps to head out to Santa Anita in the April 5th Santa Anita Oaks for her next start. In the Racing Forum article, Engelhardt's quoted as saying, "I think I'd rather go out to Santa Anita. I think the Fairground Oaks could be the toughest 3-year-old filly race of the year. I have no trouble tucking my tail and trying what seems like it might be an easier race." And certainly with what Untappable did this past weekend, I see no problem taking a little bit of a shot and moving in another direction. And Rhea Antonia obviously has a little bit of an affinity for that Santa Anita racetrack. That's the track where she won on DQ, but won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly this past fall. So again, potentially Rhea Antonia headed out to Southern California and the Santa Anita Oaks on April 5th for her next start. Interesting article from Andy Beyer, because there was discussion over the weekend after the running of the Fountain of Youth. Was there a bias there? I think there was pretty much a consensus there was a bias. I think a lot of us have thought there was a little bit of a bias at this meet in total. it seems like it's been very tough to make up ground in the stretch at Gulfstream at this meet. Flip side is the Beyer article looks at the Fountain of Youth and maybe sees a bias, but otherwise, Beyer says some believe that the Gulfstream Park Strip has been speeds favoring for most of the season. I would contend that the success of speed horses is not necessarily due to a bias. And then he just makes a case that maybe in a lot of these races, the best horse just won. It happened to be a horse on the front end, but it was the best horse winning. On the flip side, he says, watching the races this past Saturday, certainly front runners were doing pretty well, but then he notes front-running winners were producing logical results. There were some races where, yeah, they were on the front, but they were logical. But then he goes on and notes that once it got to the Fountain of Youth, things maybe proved a little bit different. He says even though the top finishers, two finishers of the Fountain of Youth, Wildcat Red and General A-Rod earned Beyers of 101, the best of any 3-year-olds in the nation, I would view, and again, this is Andy Beyer, I would view their performances as a speed-biased produced aberration and would be prepared to bet against them when they run again. So as the day went along, yes, there was speed runners winning. Beyer thinks those may have been logical results, but then based on the Fountain of Youth, he did decide that the Gulfstream Park Strip on Saturday did have a speed bias. And again, you can see that article over at the Daily Racing Forum, a little more in depth if you want to dip into that. Honor Code getting closer to his start has been noted. A little bit behind the 8-ball, but I think he's less behind the 8-ball than Shared Belief, because at least Honor Code is showing some works, is pointed to a race. And on Tuesday morning, Honor Code worked an easy half mile, 52.23. Shug McGahee said it was a little slower than I wanted, but it was fine. McGahee also says he continues on the course to go to the Rebel over at Oaklawn on March 15th. Also working down in Florida yesterday was Noble Cornerstone, easy half mile in 51.6 for Wesley Ward. Noble Cornerstone will show up this Saturday in the Grade 3 Gotham at Aqueduct. And again, he was a horse lightly raced, only in his second career start, a close-up second-place finish in that Springboard Mile. On the comeback effort, he threw in a real dud. I'll be interested to see what Noble Cornerstone does in the second start back in the Gotham this weekend. Another 3-year-old ready to make a seasonal debut is Havana. Havana worked worked Sunday at Palmettos in a minute 0.90. And again, that was at Palmettos. Sunday, in preparation for this coming Sunday at Gulfstream Park, Havana for Todd Pletcher returns to the races in the Grade 3 $150,000 swale. That's going to be 7 furlongs. Pletcher talked to the workout this past weekend, saying he's an impressive horse to watch train. We got a little bit behind schedule, but now it looks like they're back on course. So Havana adds to the Pletcher juggernaut of 3-year-olds. Internationally, there was a little news, noteworthy news over the past day. Johnny Murtaugh is retiring from riding. Murtaugh has kind of been splitting time between riding and training, and he just felt that he wasn't able to give enough time to the training side, which he's tilting a little more towards. 43 years old, so you can certainly understand him deciding to do that. If you don't pay attention to European racing, Johnny Murtaugh, probably a name you've heard regardless, but just to give you an idea, Murtaugh, over 100 Group 1 winners. He has won the Irish Derby 4 times, 6 times has won the Irish Oaks, 3 times has won the Epsom Derby. So over in Europe, this was pretty big news. Johnny Murtaugh deciding to quit the saddle. And in fact, it was just this past summer, Murtaugh was the top rider at the Royal Ascot meet. So he's 43 years old, but he was still riding pretty well. But again, he was splitting time between riding and training, so now going to devote all of his attention to the training side of the game. Johnny Murtaugh has announced he will retire. Also do want to note tomorrow at Maidan, tomorrow in Dubai, they will run the UAE Oaks, $250,000, and mile and 3/16 on the all-weather surface over there. Favorite is going to be the Godolphin runner, Saeed Mansour and Godolphin with Itamal. Itamal comes off of a win in the UAE 1,000 Guineas back on February 6th, won that pretty convincingly, and it really looks like the logical competition will be the horses that finish second and third in that UAE Oaks. Running second that day was Mensura for trainer Mike DeCock, and running third was Fidya. And as I say, just looking at the rest of the field, it looks like the 1, 2, 3 finishers from the UAE 1,000 Guineas are going to be the contenders tomorrow in the UAE Oaks. But again, that's the fourth tomorrow from Meydan in Dubai, the UAE Oaks, $250,000. All right, we will take our first break. When we come back, Jeremy Plonk will join us. We'll talk some 3-year-old action from this past weekend. And as noted a little later on, Ken Weingartner will look back at the Dan Patch Awards dinner from the weekend, talk about some of the harness racing horses of the year in the various divisions, as well as the horse of the year on the sulky side. All of that coming up when Racing Across America continues. Stay tuned.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. Happy to be joined now, as we are every Wednesday, by Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Seth. Good to be with you.
Happy to have you on board. And we talked a little bit about it last week, but as it is coming up within the next week, I do want you to tout again, Night School returns, right?
Season number 4 coming up in
Nice.
6 days. This coming Tuesday night. It's every Tuesday at 8:30. You can catch it at the Capital OTB website or more than 40 other websites around the racing industry. So we're happy to have you guys on board with us again this year. And we're going to be teaching a lot of lessons and a lot of radio simulcasts as well. So if you got used to reading the live chat in the past, it's going to get a little easier for you to follow, as most of our lessons are going to be simulcast with Steve Bick on Sirius XM.
Very good. We look forward to that. And time and day again.
Tuesday night, 8:30. Starts here on March 4th, a week from yesterday, and we'll run all the way through December 2nd. So 40 consecutive weeks throughout the year.
Look forward to it. And again, it's fun for folks who are new to the game, but also folks like me who've been around a while. You can always pick up some nice pointers from the guests. You get some great guests lined up, and it's always a lot of fun. So I would certainly point people to the night school sessions as they progress along during the rest of the year. Jeremy, speaking of things I would point folks to, I'm just holding up now my printout from the Countdown to the Crown this week. Every Friday, you can pop on over to horseplayernow.com, pull up the latest edition of Jeremy's Countdown to the Crown. Nice printable format, and I always print it up, and you have your top 20 in there. You look forward to some of the upcoming 3-year-old events and review some of the ones from the past week. We're going to review some of those, but on last Friday, these are races you were looking forward to. And I pulled up some that you noted would be players in the division, not only on the stakes side, but also maidens and allowance races and whatnot. And one of those, first up, I wanted to pull up a race that otherwise might have gone a little bit under the radar on the Gulfstream Park card, because obviously you had the Fountain of Youth, and then you had that really nice allowance race with Constitution, and I think that attracted a lot of attention. But Jeremy, a little earlier on the card, there was a maiden special I wanted to bring up, because this is a horse that, as I say, otherwise might have floated under the radar, but I want to get your opinion. We're going to watch the number 2 Global Strike win this maiden special event. It was 1 1/8 miles. It is the number 2 horse, Global Strike, getting it done under Javier Castellano for Todd Pletcher in the 3rd career start. Debuted on turf, followed that up with a good 2nd place in the dirt debut last time behind Tonalist, and then in the 3rd start of the career wins this past Saturday.
Yeah, the 1 1/8 miles races a lot of times early in the year will turn out to kind of be front-end carousels, because a lot of the horses really don't want to go 1 1/8 miles, and some of those closers that you think will get the distance really never kind of fire and can sustain that run. So front-end horses are always dangerous going 1 1/8 miles early in the year, and on that track that we saw Saturday at Gulfstream, front-end horses, were almost a tap-in putt. So Global Strike was tough to catch that day. He's got a nice pedigree, and he ran a good one. But the final 3 furlongs of this race took more than 40 seconds, 40-25 over the final 3 furlongs. You would expect someone to have closed there. And this race, more than anything, probably pinpoints out really just how strong that track bias may have been, because you would expect something from the back of the pack to come when it takes 40 seconds to run the last 3 furlongs, and nothing could. Global Strike's got a good pedigree for the poly track. He looks to be, coming along late in the game. Maybe he's a horse that Pletcher would take a shot with in something like the Spiral at Turfway, a race that typically doesn't come up super strong, maybe a good horse or two in there, and a horse who might have the pedigree to like it. So you may see that horse wheel back here later this month or later next month in the Spiral at Turfway.
Yeah, just wanted to show people that one, because as I say, given that card on Saturday, that might have floated under the radar. But the aforementioned allowance event, race number 6 on the undercard on Saturday, certainly attracted some attention. We'll watch the stretch run there too, and bring up a couple of points you've already mentioned. Number 6, Constitution, will get it done. Gets it done, however, on the front end. I like Tonalist coming into this race. Tonalist is the 8 horse, and it was just tough to make up ground in the stretch. So even coming out of this race, I still am a little bit of a Tonalist fan in here. And Constitution, yeah, 2 for 2 so far, but both on the Gulfstream Park strip. I certainly think he's going to turn out to be a nice horse, but I want him really to validate what we've seen in the first 2 on a track away from Gulfstream.
Yeah, that's probably what we want to see with a horse like that. I agree there. You kind of have that Pletcher this time of year. These kind of horses are kind of commonplace for him, I mean, the Verrazanos, the Traveling Mans. We've seen these kind of horses the past couple of years. Some pan out to be pretty darn good, and some don't. You really don't know what you're going to get until they get those races away from Gulfstream. And so with Constitution, it's still a wait and see. This was a better effort than I thought he was capable after his debut. I underrated his debut a little bit. I wasn't very impressed with it, so it surprised me that he came back and was able to beat this particular field. Knowing how the speed bias played out, obviously that certainly helped. But this horse galloped out really well past the wire. You would expect, that maybe he would have, just survived because of that, and past the wire, some of the pluggers would have went on by him. But he galloped out pretty strongly, and the fractions were solid. So, give Constitution a little plus here. Tonalist, who ran second, I don't think loses much in defeat. I think he's a really solid horse, and Clement will give him another shot on the trail. And Mexicoma, the 3rd-place finisher, really had a hard time with the first turn from that wide post, and was almost a little bit sideways going into the first turn. And he made up about 5 lengths on the winner, over the latter part of the race. So I think Mexicoma was good enough too. Mexicoma didn't gallop out tremendously, like you would expect a closer to have in this race, but it's his first start back, and I think he's still a fairly decent player.
All right, let's shift our attention now to the big race down at Gulfstream on the weekend. We will watch the Fountain of Youth, get some opinions there. Top of the show, I looked at the Andy Beyer column where he pointed to the Fountain of Youth as absolutely verifying a speed bias. I liked Wildcat Red coming into this. I thought off of that last race, the Hutchison, this horse could be live. Will this horse stretch out to the Kentucky Derby distance? I don't know, but I thought going 1 1/16 at Gulfstream was going to be well within this one's comfort zone. Now, I didn't anticipate a ding-dong battle all the way around the track with General A-Rod, and given that, these 2 horses had license to throw out the anchor, but again, It seems like the track was just playing to this kind of a situation. They continue on to the wire with Wildcat Red, the number 4 horse, just getting the nod there at the wire. General A-Rod second. But I'll tell you, reading the pundits over the past few days since the race, probably the horse that's getting the most respect is Top Billing, who, again, given the difficulty making up ground in the stretch, we're watching the stretch run here, he did okay to run third.
Yeah, he did do okay to run third, but I don't know he did enough to be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, in running third. This is an overblown effort in his third-place finish, and I think all the talk out of this race is going to be about how he did this and how he did that to overcome and finish third. But he did. I don't want to make way too much out of a gallop out, but he didn't gallop out past this field. I mean, the General A-Rod finished up better than anybody, and even Medal Count, the horse who closed for fifth. Medal Count in fifth may have run as good or better than Top Billing did in this race when you're projecting it forward to 1 1/8 miles and 1 1/4 miles. Watch the gallop out. Medal Count really did what you want to see from a closer who came up short against the bias in the track. The race is pretty much over at the wire for Top Billing, and so I don't know. Did he get a tremendous amount out of this? I'm not sure. I know this. He's still a very good horse. I still have him in my top 5, and I still want to see another race. But could I move him up over a top 2 or 3 horses that I really like in the class? I can't do it off this effort. I think people are going a little gaga over the third-place finish. Somebody has to finish third when those 2 duelers kept going all the way. General A-Rod is the better of the 2 horses who hit the wire 1-2. I'm convinced of that. He's got a very good pedigree to go long. Mike Maker's been down the road before. Garofalo's kind of new at this. And I think at the end of the day, if Garofalo really had a Derby horse in Wildcat Red, you don't go back to the Hutchison from the last race. That Hutchison was a good win. It was a good chance to get a purse, and it set him up for Wildcat Red running his Derby day in the Fountain of Youth. He has now peaked in his form cycle, running 3 hard races at the meet and Big Stakes Company, and 1 1/16 on a speed-favoring track with a good post draw. Everything's set up to make Wildcat Red have a chance to win that race on Saturday, and he's a very good horse, and he was able to do so. But stretching him out any further, I think, is not going to work whatsoever. He's probably got the points to make the Derby. He could run 4th or 5th higher than the Florida Derby and still make it to the Kentucky Derby now, talking about Wildcat Red. But I wouldn't want to touch him moving forward. General A-Rod, I like a lot out of this race. Top Billing, I liked, decent enough, and he holds his position as a horse you want to keep watching, but didn't move forward, I don't think. And I think Medal Count moves forward a little bit off this race as a little bit of a wide guy horse.
And Commissioner, I note you had number 4 on your top 20 last Friday. He didn't really dip that much when you came out with your contribution to the Courier-Journal poll.
Yeah, we've got to do that poll about an hour after the last prep race. So, there's some shifts that kind of happen for that race to make the Sunday paper in the Louisville Courier-Journal. We've got to kind of make snap analysis of races. So I didn't want to overly drastically drop a horse that I do have some confidence in. Commissioner, and I'm going to make this comparison in my column this week, he reminds me of Drosselmeyer, another horse for WinStar, who a lot of folks just said, oh, that was a nice allowance win, but then when he got to the Stakes Company and the Risen Star, he didn't fire. They said, oh, Drosselmeyer's just not fast. He's just not fast. Well, one of my points this week I'm making in Countdown is fast doesn't win Triple Crown races. Fast horses don't win these races. There's so much more to the qualities you need than fast. And I think with Commissioner, it's true. He's not a fast horse. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But Drosselmeyer turned out to be a Belmont and Breeders' Cup Classic winner in 1 1/4 miles and 1.5 miles, because against big fields over real lengths of distances, pure speed's not going to win those races. You need a lot more intangibles and a lot more qualities and toughness. For Commissioner, he was too fast to this, or he was too close to this fast pace for his running style. I think they knew from the inside they had to break well. He ran a half, according to Trackers, in about 47 flat. On Derby Day, a horse like Commissioner is probably going to run 48, 49, high 48s for the half and be another 6-8 lengths behind, because they know the speed will come back in the Derby. They know those horses aren't going to run away like they were at 1 1/16 on a speed-favoring track like Gulfstream. So I think if you like Commissioner, you have to peel back a little bit off of this performance, and shows that he's not fast and all those other qualities. He's just those other qualities. But those other qualities win Triple Crown races. Drosselmeyer, Giacomo, Summer Bird. There are horses along those lines who never ran super fast and never caught the eye, but became Triple Crown race winners. Commissioner still has a shot. I think it's probably good to get him away from Gulfstream, obviously, and he makes a lot of sense for the Wood Memorial.
And going back to top billing, I had Andy Serling on Monday, and he was pretty much in your camp. He wasn't quite as impressed with the performance as a lot of the pundits were. The question now, where does Shug go next with him? Does he stick to Gulfstream, where he's up against it a little bit bias-wise, or does he go up to the Wood Memorial?
That's a tough call, and a lot may have to do with Honor Code. Let's just be honest. He's got 2 bullets in the holster. Honor Code's missed a bunch of chances to run already. If Honor Code goes in the Rebel and then the Wood, or the Rebel then the Arkansas Derby, that makes a difference where you might go with top billing and where he would shift out. The good thing with Honor Code is with top billing is he ran second. He got 20 points if you're just looking to qualify. And the Florida Derby's worth 100 points on the scale. So as that goes down the line. Even if he runs third in the Florida Derby, that's going to put him at 40 points and easily put him in the Derby field, based on what we saw last year. So if Shug's looking at Honor top billing and saying, look, I want him to peak on the first Saturday in May, he knows he's going to have to run 1, 2, 3 in the Florida Derby anyway, and he knows this horse was able, against all that bias and everything, still run third. I should say he got 10 points in the Fountain of Youth for that third-place finish, not 20. He didn't run second. He ran third. So, Shug just knows he's got to run kind of 1, 2, 3 in the Florida Derby. I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed there and tried to notch the Florida Derby. You're running basically, off the van coming down from Palmettos, and I think that's, I wouldn't be afraid to run him there. Now, Cairo Prince, a lot has to do with Cairo Prince. Say something happens with Cairo Prince and he stubs a toe in training and doesn't make the Florida Derby. Then I think you've got a favorite in top billing for the Florida Derby, and you're not going to go anywhere. So if Cairo Prince is in the Florida Derby, maybe you decide to hit the road and try to be a little more conservative and play a safer route. Yeah,
it will be interesting to see what his decision is. All right, Jeremy, let's shift over to Fairgrounds, and before we get to the big race there, I wanted to pull up a maiden that may have floated under the radar otherwise. We're going to watch the stretch run of the 7th race on Saturday, maiden special weight event for 3-year-olds. They're going 6 here. Winner's going to be the number 4, Glacken 2. Glacken 2 is making the 3rd career start off a couple of second-place finishes for Brett Calhoun. And we bring this up because, as you wrote in your Friday edition of Countdown to the Crown, this race was interesting because Glacken 2 last time out had finished second to the Trunk Monkey. The Trunk Monkey was a maiden debut winner down at Fairgrounds on January 31st. And this effort is interesting from Glacken 2 as we see winning here down at Fairgrounds on Saturday. It's interesting in that it flatters the Trunk Monkey, and the Trunk Monkey set to come back a little later this week on the 28th in the 7th race at Fairgrounds. What were your thoughts on Glacken 2? And then as far as in relation to the Trunk Monkey?
Well, Glacken 2 was very impressive in this race. He was bet like a 1-to-5 shot and ran like it, and he ran a very good race. I mean, he was second in probably the 2 best maiden races run in the South this year, including Oaklawn. Oaklawn or Fairgrounds, Unknown Road, and then the Trunk Monkey. So he was second to 2 really nice horses that ran impressive performances. He got a little class relief against an easier field and crushed them like a good horse should. The Glacken 2 is not going to go on and become a distance horse. I mean, he's bred to sprint. He's going to be a pretty nice sprinter and a horse to keep your eye on. Maybe he's a Derby trial kind of horse like that, or somebody could show up, on Belmont Day in the Riva Ridge or something along the Woody Stevens, I should say, something along those kind of lines. It does flatter the form of the Trunk Monkey. He is entered back tomorrow on Thursday at Fairgrounds in an allowance route race. It's a turf race, but he's entered main track only. And the way they take races off the turf down at Fairgrounds this year, there's probably a better than 50-50 chance that race goes to the dirt, and we might get to see the Trunk Monkey run on the dirt. That would give him enough time to still make the Louisiana Derby the way the races play out. And I think that, the Trunk Monkey is a horse who's stablemate of Albano, and, what Larry Jones wants to do with those 2 horses and perhaps separate them means we might see one of them head to Oaklawn perhaps and one stay at Fairgrounds. But I think the Trunk Monkey is a good horse who got some form flattery on Friday from that race from Glacken 2 on Saturday, I should say, and it makes him look better. Unknown Road's another one who looks good out of this. Unknown Road had the problem. He had the testicular problem, and they gelded him, and so he still has a chance to get back. I want to see timing-wise if they get him back in decent shape before the Triple Crown. Maybe Al Stahl tries to go to the Preakness with a horse like that, Unknown Road. But again, this is another race that flatters a good horse from the Fairgrounds. I think both Unknown Road and then the Trunk Monkey both feel good about how things turned out.
All right, and let's look out at the feature on Saturday at the fairgrounds. Obviously, there was a nice stakes card, but the highlight had to be the 3-year-old event, the Risen Star Grade 2 event, $400,000, mile and a 16th. And we talked a little earlier, where does Shug go with top billing? Does he stay down in Florida, or does he worry about the bias and go someplace else? Well, Todd Pletcher and Starlight decided to avoid the bias with Intense Holiday. It worked out for them as he raced down the stretch under Mike Smith, the number 9 horse, and catches the aforementioned Albano, who put in a very gutsy effort, the sibling to Mark Valesky. Vickers in trouble, runs third, and coming out of the far outside post position there, that was probably an okay third place finish. But again, it was a nice grinding effort from the number 9 Intense Holiday under Mike Smith.
Yeah, the fourth time in the last 5 years that the Risen Star winner is a horse who shipped in from Florida to win, and those out-of-towners have made that trip successfully. Pletcher's done it a few times now for this race, and Intense Holiday, flatters what we saw in Florida. Most people realize the best horses are in Florida during the winter, and races like this kind of validate that. When a horse who's consistently third, fourth in some of the bigger races on the East Coast goes west and gets the victory, it was a good pace setup. It was a good finish. Mike Smith came in to ride. A lot of positives there, and Intense Holiday ran a good race. There was a lot of pace on the front end, and I think, Albano continues to run farther than I expect him to run. He's a good, tough, gritty horse, and he ran too good to lose in this case. He really did all the dirty work and got nailed on the wire. It was kind of a shame for him because I can't see him winning the Louisiana Derby at a mile and an eighth, and I can't see him going on further than that for the Classics kind of races. So this may have been Derby Day for Albano. We talked about that for Wildcat Red. What is your quote-unquote Derby Day? What's the biggest purse, the best distance, and the biggest prestige race you can win as a 3-year-old? And for some of these horses, it becomes these middle-distance races early in the year because they have such good and inflated purses. I mean, a $400,000 race. These horses won't get a chance to run for $400 after the Triple Crown very often at all. So, Albano had his shot here. He set a nice, even tone throughout, and just like I said, just got nailed at the end. Intense Holiday ran a little bit slower than Untappable did in the Rachel Alexandra, but Untappable won by a ton. She ran a monster performance. So I think that's more a plus to Untappable's performance in the Philly race than really a knock that you're going to make against Intense Holiday. Pretty nice win here by Intense Holiday. Plenty of class on paper. I mean, the horse had run in all the big races on the East Coast from the fall through the spring, and so I think Intense Holiday is one who's going to be a Kentucky Derby horse. I mean, he's got the points now, obviously, with the 50 points, but he's the kind of horse that's going to be a Derby horse anyway. A good, solid second, third, fourth in all the big races. You know how it works. These horses are pretty durable. He's had a good campaign at 2 and 3 now, and he's the kind of horse who's going to get to Louisville. He's going to be middle of the pack in the Derby, and he's going to fit in the race. So I think we know we've got one starter in the gate already for the Derby, and I would say Intense Holiday is going to take one of those 20 spots.
And certainly, Risen Star, Fountain of Youth, 2 very nice competitive fields this weekend. But I'm looking at your top 20 from last Friday as compared to what you did on Sunday in the Courier-Journal. And I'm also relating it to the other pundits that I've looked at this week who have subsequently put out Derby 10s and Derby dozens and whatnot. It looks like the weekend racing, as I said, with nice competitive fields, didn't do enough to shake things up because your top 3, I'm seeing Candy Boy, Cairo Prince, Strong Mandate, no shake-up on the top.
Yeah, and top billing was 4 going into the week, and I didn't move him. I didn't feel – you can't knock the horse because there was that strong bias, and so you can't knock him. But I can't leapfrog anybody off of that either. And like you said with Andy earlier in the week, I mean, it was a good performance, but I don't know enough about how great that performance was to try to drum some of those other horses. I mean, Strong Mandate came back with another bullet workout earlier this week already out of that Southwest. I mean, this is a horse who's going to thrive, and we know Cairo Prince is being pointed to the Florida Derby. He's got one dance to get there, and Candy Boy being pointed to the Santa Anita Derby, already proven with one dance to get there. I mean, to supplant those top 3 for me, it's going to take a pretty good effort by somebody, which I haven't quite seen yet. Obviously Tapiture, if he comes back and repeats that Southwest in the Rebel, he's a horse who's going to move way up as well, because if he can handle Strong Mandate once again at a mile and a 16th, then obviously you've got to give Tapiture a lot of credit. I think General A-Rod's a horse who can move up. I've got him kind of about number 8 right now as I'm loosely working on the rankings for this Friday, and I think General A-Rod's kind of moving up a little bit. he's one I'm getting a little better feel for, and I like what I see from him.
All right. As always, we appreciate the visit, Jeremy. Again, we'll tout people to head on over to horseplayernow.com on Friday. The new edition of Countdown to the Crown comes out every Friday afternoon, and you can print that up. Jeremy, as always, appreciate the visit, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, one request. We're about 200 viewers short of hitting the 50,000 mark for the Countdown to the Crown preseason annual. So go check that out, read the magazine, and put us over 50 grand today.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we'll tout that as well, because that is absolutely a very good product. We talked about it when it first came out, and it certainly lived up to all expectations. Jeremy, again, thanks for the visit.
Take care, everyone.
All right, Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com and Countdown to the Crown. We'll take our break. When we come back, Ken Weingartner from the United States Trotting Association. We'll talk some of the sulky side, the year-end 2013 top horses right after this.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB Bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Very happy to be joined now by Ken Weingartner, Media Relations Manager for the USTA. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. I don't have Ken in my ear now. Ken, do I have you now? Can you just say something?
Good morning.
There we go. Now I got
okay.
you. Yeah, now we're good to go.
Okay.
Ken, got you on this morning because over the weekend it was the Dan Patch Awards dinner, and just before we get into some specifics, just give us a little idea how the dinner went.
Oh, well, it was a great dinner. Nearly 400 people in attendance down in Dover, Delaware, and a lot of suspense this year to see who was going to be Horse of the Year as well as Pacer of the Year. A lot of uncertainty how those votes were going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. As it got down towards the end of the year, I was keeping track, and the pundits were going back and forth. Everybody had their opinion. Certainly, Captain Treacherous was a horse we followed as the year went along here on the show, but Be a Magician, as it got later in the year, she was getting a lot of support, and we will let folks know that, in fact, it was Be a Magician named the Harness Horse of the Year. Be a Magician winds up 2013, 17 for 17, $1.5 million in earnings, so certainly a deserving Horse of the Year. And Ken, I'll tell you, I pulled up the final vote tally, and given the pundits going back and forth, as I say, over those last couple of months, She won by a wider margin than I thought. Now, that may be, as it got to the end of the year, Captain Treacherous maybe didn't hold up as well. But, boy, she won. She had 94 votes as compared to 18 for Foiled Again and 16 for Captain Treacherous. So she was kind of a runaway winner. And as we talk a little bit about Be a Magician, Ken, I pulled up the stretch run going back to really one of her better races where it looked like she may be in a little trouble. Back on November 9th, the American National at Balmoral. As folks watch the stretch run as we talk, she's going to be the number 6 horse sitting on the rail just behind the leader. And as we turn into the stretch, Be a Magician is completely blocked in here. Now, about mid-stretch, she ducks down and finally gets some room and gets up, but really shows her class in this event to stay undefeated, as I say, again, back in early November. But Ken, again, Be a Magician, very deserving winner this year.
Yeah, you could have made a case for 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 horses this year, but she was just tremendous throughout the year. 17 for 17, as you mentioned, and I went back and looked over the last 40 years, and there hasn't been a horse to go through a season undefeated with that many starts at stakes-level competition. So, she really did something that was kind of unprecedented. She's the first 3-year-old filly trotter since Continental Victory to be named Horse of the Year. Continental Victory was in 1996. And interestingly, Be a Magician broke Continental Victory's single-season earnings record this year. So she really had a historical season in a lot of senses.
Yeah, and she's Horse of the Year, Trotter of the Year, 3-year-old filly trotter as well. A very, very impressive season. And as I say, we were watching Captain Treacherous as the year went along, but towards the end of the year, there was a lot of back and forth among the folks watching the industry. Who's going to wind up with the title at the end of the year, Captain Treacherous or Be a Magician? And as noted, Be a Magician, vote total-wise, was a winner by a pretty wide margin. Trotter of the Year, even wider margin for her, 123 votes for her, as compared to the second and third place finishers who were tied with 3 votes apiece. So she was a runaway winner, a Trotter of the Year.
Right, and I don't think that was totally unexpected, but as you mentioned, it was a little bit surprising, the margin for Horse of the Year. But I think what happened with some of that vote is that Foiled Again came on really strong at the end of the year, and he really split the vote with Captain Treacherous, and that created that larger margin as well.
Yeah, and the final race of the year where Captain Treacherous finishes off the board, I think gave people an excuse to tilt for Be a Magician in there, so that could have explained a little bit as well. But speaking of Captain Treacherous, let's talk about him a little bit, because again, we focused on him a lot during the season here on this show. He was fun to watch. 16 starts in 2013, 13 wins, couple of second place finishes, over $2 million in earnings. We got the stretch run here going back to the Breeders' Crown at Pocono on October 19th. And I pulled up this one just because it is an absolutely gutsy performance. That is Captain Treacherous, the number 1 horse on the lead as they go into the final turn. And really pushed all the way and to the wire by Sunshine Beach, but just will never let that one go by. So Captain Treacherous, really, again, a deserving vote for 3-year-old Pacer of the Year, but he was also the Pacer of the Year as well.
And you talk about gutsy performances. I mean, you could pick about any race that he was in, and he gave a gutsy performance. I mean, he had so much heart this year, and I think that really endeared him to a lot of people. I had an opportunity to see him just a couple weeks ago. He returned to the stable of Tony Alagna to start getting ready for his 4-year-old season, and he looks just terrific. And, he could be sitting on a really big year, and, he's going to be a guy we're going to be talking about in the Horse of the Year conversation for this season. And looking back at what he accomplished, he's the first Pacer to be Pacer of the Year in back-to-back years since Jenna's Beach Boy in the mid-'90s. And that's a pretty big name. And then he's the only one, along with Niatross, to do it at ages 2 and 3. So when you're in the same sentence as Niatross, you're pretty well accomplished.
Yeah, that's pretty good, absolutely. And another horse that we've mentioned earlier in the conversation, I just want to bring up, it is Foiled Again. Foiled Again was named the older male Pacer, and I wanted to bring him up because, as you say, towards the end of the year, he came back into his own. And Ken, I pulled up lifetime past performances for all 3 of these horses for the discussion this morning, and it was kind of funny. I printed up the past performances for Be a Magician. I print up the past performances for Captain Treacherous, and then I hit the print for Foiled Again, and the printer just kept going and going. And I thought, well, what's going on here? And then I pulled it up and realized, yeah, well, it takes a few pages to get 198 starts on there. Do you believe that? Boy, this guy, and now, even at this stage of the game in 2013, 29 starts, 11 wins, 6 second-place finishes, 7 third. In his career, over $6 million. This year alone, though, last year, $1.4 million. And Ken, while we talk, I pulled up, and I meant to pull up the final, and I pulled up the November 23rd race by mistake, but we'll look at that because we will get to see Foiled Again win. And in this race, Foiled Again is going to be the number 4 horse with a very gutsy performance. But it was a week later in that free-for-all at the Meadowlands on the 30th where he ran the very big race that really attracted the attention of people, and that was the race in which Captain Treacherous was a little bit of a disappointing 6th to wind up the season. But again, we're watching the race just prior to that on November 23rd. It will be Foiled Again winning as the number 4 horse with a nice gutsy performance, but he winds up being named the older male pacer of the year. And again, you look at his career in total, just amazing.
It almost leaves you speechless what he's accomplished. I mean, to think of a 9-year-old doing what he's done, and he's won over $1 million at age 9, at age 8, and then age 7. So he's been doing it at the back part of his career consistently, and he really came on strong at the end of the year. Traditionally, the Meadowlands has been a track he has not fared well at, and people will say that's because they race primarily there in the summer, and the summer is not Foiled's best time of year. He's really at his best in the spring and in the fall. And when he won those last 2 races at the Meadowlands, I think that really opened a lot of eyes. And, against the competition, there was a lot of interest with Captain Treacherous going up there to take on the older horses. So, all eyes were on those races at the end of the year, and that really helped vault him into the conversation for Horse of the Year and Pacer of the Year. But what can you say about him? $6 million, he's the richest standardbred in North American history. And, he's coming back next year, and he's going to do it again.
Are all 3 of these scheduled to come back in 214, Be a Magician, Captain Treacherous, and Foiled Again?
Yes,
nice.
They will all be back.
That's what we like to hear. Now, and speaking of looking to the future, I just wanted to pick up on the 2-year-olds that were voted in their various categories and get some of your thoughts on them going forward. The male trotter, the 2-year-old male trotter, Father Patrick, 2-year-old filly trotter, Shake It Sherry, the 2-year-old male pacer he's watching, 2-year-old filly pacer, Precious Beauty. What's the future for these hold?
Well, I think of all of those, people are going to be most interested in Father Patrick because he was so dominant last year. And Jimmy Takter, who trains him, has compared him to Mac Lobel and Muscle Hill, who are 2 of the finest trotters, of the last 30 years. And it'll be interesting to see how he does taking the step forward as a 3-year-old this year. Shake It carries another horse in the Takter stable, so he's kind of got an embarrassment of riches in that with the trotters, the 3-year-old trotters for this season. And another horse that's going to be really interesting is he's watching because he raced only on the New York circuit last year. He didn't go into open competition, but he was undefeated in 8 starts and dominated there. Did a lot of his racing on half-mile tracks, which is very tough. And I think people are going to be really curious to see what happens this year when he starts to test the open stakes competition.
All right. Yeah, it looks like the 2-year-olds turning 3 will be fun. But again, it's always nice when you get back these kind of superstars. Be a Magician, Captain Treacherous, Foiled Again. They'll be fun to watch as well. So we're counting people on the sulky side. There are some. We're lamenting all over the horse racing game when the superstars go to the sidelines. But we have the 3 top horses on the sulky side this year coming back. So that's going to be fun for us to watch. And Ken, before I let you go, I don't think I've talked to you since the Meadowlands has reopened with their new facility. I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to go down and visit, what your impressions were, because I've certainly been impressed by what Jeff Gurl is trying to do down there at the Meadowlands.
I was there at the end of November when it opened. I have not been back since then, but I'm sure it's even better now than when I saw it, but it really was a nice facility. It's very modern. I think, it's kind of the future of racing. It's not as large as the old grandstand, but it's big enough to accommodate the crowds, and it has some new features with a really nice sports bar. It's got a great rooftop terrace that in the spring and the summer people are going to be flocking up there because you get a great view of Manhattan from up there, and you'll be able to watch the races. So I think it's really he's trying to emphasize not just the racing, but the entertainment aspect of it. He's got a nightclub in there, and it's going to be a place where I think he's going to be able to attract some young people and kind of make it a hip, cool place to be.
Yeah, and that's just the way I've described it. He shrunk the actual facility, but he enlarged the amenities. So I think, as you say, a 21st century facility that's going to have a little buzz and be very nice. So we're certainly rooting for that to do well. Ken, as always, appreciate the visit, updating us on those awards from the past weekend, looking back at 2013, and also through the conversation. Now we know we have some nice runners to look for in 2014 as well. But again, thanks for the visit.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Ken Weingartner, the Media Relations Manager from the U.S. Trotting Association. All right, that's going to bring us close to the end of the show, but as promised, just before we do that, I wanted to pull up the Gulfstream, that Rainbow Six, just give you an idea where my ticket's going to go in that 20-cent bet. I have a $43 ticket. It's a sequence that is just very, very tough. So, jump in. I'm recommending jumping in. This is a day that it's a little bit tough, though. But in the opening leg, I'm going to go 3 deep, 2, 6, and 3. I said on the Handicappers Report earlier, I think this is a very tough race to start the sequence. My top horse, Aggie H, has very consistent numbers. But as I note here, in my handicapping notes, gets a weak vote in a weak field. And it's just, it's a tough way to start out the sequence and a tough sequence. But I'm going to go 3 deep in that first leg. Second leg, I'm going to only go 2 deep. But boy, this is an absolutely tough field. I called it on the Handicappers Report, 8, 10, 4, and 6. But I said there, the number 2 Global Express you can make a case for. O Prado Olay you can make a case for. Danhauser. So this is a very tough race. I'm only going to go a couple of deep, though. Cozy Kitten, having won a similar race 2 back, and Tattenham for Bill Mott. I'll use those in here, the 8 and the 10. In the third leg, race number 7, I got to have it 2, 3, and 4. But again, it's a tough race. I think Varsity, hopefully coming back and doing similar to what we saw last season. The second start of the Gulfstream meet last year, this horse absolutely freaked. It's the second start again of the season this year. So we'll hope Varsity can get it done. I have Bold Thunder and Travelin' Man in the mix. But I'm leaving out of my ticket Wicked Tune, who last out won that Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint. Fiddler's Patriot off the long layoff was a concern for me. But if this one comes back with any form, Fiddler's Patriot could be a contender. Speechify trying the turf for the first time. It's a tough sequence. But in that 7th race, I'm going to go 2, 3, and 4. In the 8th race, the 4th race in the sequence, I'll go 7, 5, 9. Again, only 3 deep. Trying to keep the ticket fairly reasonable, but it's a tough sequence to do that. As I said earlier on the Handicappers Report, I'd love to find. The sequence really appeals to me if I can find a single, maybe a couple of singles that I have some amount of confidence about. This just isn't that kind of day. But I'm, again, 7, 5, and 9 in here. Rapacious, I think, on the class drop is interesting. A horse that I had in the 4th spot on the Handicappers Report, won't be on my ticket, Face the Race, the number 12 horse. Adds blinkers, has some early speed. I think is very, very dangerous. So, watching out for that one. 9th race, which is the next to last race in the sequence. I'm only going to go 2 deep. I'm going to use the 5 and the 8. 8, Stately Defense, maybe a single on some folks' ticket. As I said on the Handicappers Report, I'm not that confident, so I'll also use another incident in there, and then I'll go 3 deep in the finale, or excuse me, I'll go 2 deep in the finale, but there's a third horse that scares me. I'm going to use the 2 and the 4 in here. Sleepless Night on the Class Relief looks very, very dangerous. Also toss the 4 in, but the number 10, El Uno, scares me. I wanted to keep the ticket fairly reasonable. If there's a scratch earlier in the sequence, the number 10 may be the one I'm looking to add in. So again, in this Gulfstream Park Rainbow Six today, here's the way I have it in my sequence. It's a 3 by 2 by 3 by 3 by 2 by 2 sequence. $43 ticket at the 20-cent bet. I have a 2, 6, 3 with 8, 10 with 2, 3, 4 with 7, 5, 9, with 5, 8, with 2 and 4. And in that last race, the 10 is one that I would think about putting in if there was a scratch. So there's the play this afternoon. We'll see what happens. Again, It's becoming such an attractive bet. I'll jump in even at the $40 bet. I'm a little dicey today because it's a tough sequence, but it should be fun, should be playable. The 20-cent bet if you want to pair some horses off and make your own ticket that's a little more reasonable and just hope for the best. Take a shot because again, 1.4 million in the pool. They'll add another six-figure total to that, and it'll be worth taking a shot at for the next few days, so long as nobody pulls down the whole pool. All right, that wraps things up for Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. We wound things up just a few minutes ago with Ken Weingartner of the USTA. Before that, Jeremy Plonk from HorsePlayerNow.com and Countdown to the Crown. That wraps things up. We're here every Monday through Friday from 10 until 11 a.m. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time. A little earlier was the Handicappers Report. Hopefully we gave you some good information there. So enjoy the races this afternoon. Let's all hit that Rainbow Six. Cash some tickets. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.